Maya's never played by the rules. Not in life, not in love, and definitely not at black tie events she wasn't invited to. But when her wild night leaves her escorted out by security and permanently etched in the mind of the infuriatingly perfect and infuriatingly attractive host Peter Cole, her life takes a turn she didn't see coming. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The grand hall of the Carlton estate gleamed under a canopy of crystal chandeliers, each one dripping with elegance and enough wattage to light up a small village. Rows of gold-trimmed chairs lined the pristine marble floor, and the soft hum of a string quartet floated through the air, adding just the right amount of grace to the already perfect evening. Guests clinked champagne flutes and exchanged polite laughter, their designer labels and manicured charm on full display. Maya, on the other hand, was already 2 glasses in and determined to make the most of her unplanned night out. "I swear this is the last wedding you dragged me to as your plus one," she whispered to her best friend, Laura, as they entered the venue. "The last time I had to wear heels this high, I almost lost a toe." Laura rolled her eyes affectionately, her arm hooked around Maya's. "You're dramatic. Just smile, sip something sparkly, and pretend you belong." "Belong? In this rich people annual convention? Please. I stick out like a flamingo at a funeral." But Maya was smiling because, truthfully, she loved nights like this. Ones where she had no responsibilities, no expectations, and no one she had to impress. Just good drinks, a free buffet, and a crowd full of people who didn't know her well enough to judge her. It was her kind of chaos. While Laura joined a group of co-workers at a corner table, Maya made a beeline for the bar. The bartender gave her a quick once-over. A navy blue dress hugging her curves, curls pinned up in a messy yet enchanting style, and a mischievous spark in her eye, and silently passed her a glass of champagne without asking. "Bless you," she said, lifting the flute like a trophy. "You get me." Sipping her drink and scanning the room, Maya felt like Alice in a very polished, very expensive wonderland. Every woman looked airbrushed. Every man smelled like imported leather and power. She shrugged and turned back to the bar. "One of everything, please. Except the ones with umbrellas. I draw the line at cliché." By the time she finished her second cocktail, something citrusy and entirely too strong, her shoulders were relaxed, her inner critic was silent, and she was feeling fabulous. She started chatting with a man in a velvet blazer who opened with a compliment about her energy. He lasted 7 minutes before her sarcasm made him laugh awkwardly and pretend to get a call. "Oh no, go save the world," she called after him as he disappeared into the crowd. Superman's work is never done. Another man, this one with perfect cheekbones and the personality of a stale croissant, approached soon after. Maya leaned in, listening intently as he talked about hedge funds, and then, without warning, snorted from holding in laughter. "Sorry, I thought you were joking," she said. "Turns out you were just boring." He blinked. "Excuse me?" She gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. "It's not your fault. Not everyone has charisma. I'm sure your accountant loves you." He walked away muttering something about classless women, and Maya downed another sip of whatever glowing drink was in her glass. "Next," she declared, spinning slightly on her heels. At some point, the music shifted. The quartet had been replaced by a DJ playing mellow jazz remixes, and guests began drifting toward the dance floor. Maya, whose tolerance for alcohol was as unpredictable as her mood swings, felt her body start to sway. The music was smooth, her head was light, and the space between tipsy and unhinged was rapidly closing. Without thinking twice, she stepped onto the dance floor and began to move. Not the gentle, swaying side-to-side kind of dance one might expect at a high society wedding. No, Maya was dancing like she was at a beach party in Ibiza. Arms in the air, hair falling loose from its pins, spinning like nobody was watching, except they were. Every single guest. But Maya didn't notice. She was laughing, tossing her shoes to the side, living her best main character moment. People whispered. Someone gasped. A child pointed. By the time Lara turned around from across the room, she saw her best friend center stage, attempting a cartwheel in front of the horrified bride's grandmother. "Oh my God," Lara muttered, shoving her drink into the hands of a startled stranger and running toward the chaos. At that very moment, Peter Cole, the host of the wedding, owner of the estate, and the man who had bankrolled this entire tasteful affair, stepped forward from a quiet conversation near the bar. He had been watching from a distance for a while now, eyes narrowing with disbelief and then reluctant curiosity. While everyone else saw a drunken mess, he saw something else. She was a hurricane in heels. Loud, unpredictable, a walking scandal. And absolutely not supposed to be here. He moved toward her, cutting through the crowd like a blade through silk. He stopped just short of where Maya was now attempting to start a conga line with two confused groomsmen. "Miss," he said firmly, standing tall in his tailored black suit. "This needs to stop." Maya turned, hair in her face, lipstick slightly smudged, eyes wide with amusement. "Oh, are you the groom?" she teased. "Congrats. But your party needs more tequila." "I'm the host," Peter said flatly. "Oof," she winced. "Then I should definitely not be talking to you right now." He raised a brow. "And yet here we are." She tilted her head, staring at him. Clearly impressed, but not in a way he was used to. "You're pretty. In a villain who gets a redemption arc kind of way." Peter blinked. Then, without another word, he turned to security, subtly motioning toward her. Within moments, two suited guards appeared. Maya threw her hands up in mock surrender. "Relax, gentlemen. I'll go. But only because I'm starving and someone mentioned tacos earlier." Lara appeared just in time, grabbing her friend's purse and mouthing apologies to anyone who would listen as they were escorted out of the estate. Maya blew a kiss to the crowd and stumbled into the waiting cab. Inside the estate, silence slowly returned. Peter looked out toward the gates where the cab disappeared into the night, then back at the wreckage left behind. A few scattered heels, a broken champagne flute, and the lingering echo of laughter. He didn't know it yet, but his life had just been completely derailed. The cab screeched a little as it pulled off from the front gate, Maya half hanging out of the window, waving like she was the queen of chaos bidding farewell to her loyal subjects. "Tell Peter I love his shoes," she shouted to no one in particular, her laughter echoing in the otherwise stunned silence of the wedding guests. Inside the estate, the music had been lowered to a polite hush. Conversations were tentative. People shifted uncomfortably, like they weren't sure if the show was over or if there'd be an encore. Waiters tiptoed around the shattered champagne flute Maya had knocked over during her dramatic exit, and the DJ stood still, hand hovering awkwardly over the next track. Peter Cole, still composed but visibly annoyed, ran a hand across his jawline, watching the front gates like the entire incident might rewind itself and vanish. But no, the woman was gone, and the scene she left behind was unmistakably real. The bride's mother approached him, tight-lipped and hissing beneath her breath. "Who was that girl?" Peter replied calmly, "A guest of a guest, apparently." "Well, I hope she's not invited to the honeymoon." The woman snapped before marching away in a flurry of pearls and indignation. He sighed. His reputation for perfect events, controlled, predictable, prestigious, had taken a hit. This wedding was supposed to be flawless. And yet, here he was, cleaning up the aftershocks of a one-woman hurricane in heels. Lara, meanwhile, sat in the back of the cab with Maya, trying very hard to contain her internal meltdown. "Maya," she said, voice calm but stern, "what the hell was that?" Maya giggled, flopping dramatically against the seat like a movie star on her last breath. "Was I brilliant, or was I brilliant? You were a disaster." "I had fun." Maya grinned, mascara slightly smudged and one earring missing. "Did you see that second guy? I think he was about to propose before I told him his energy was stale." Lara pressed her palms into her face. "I told you not to overdo it with the drinks. You said, and I quote, 'be chill.' I was chill. Until I wasn't." She shrugged. "Honestly, These people needed a little shaking up. It was like mingling at a funeral with better lighting. Lara stared at her. You danced on a table. You knocked over a floral arrangement. You tried to convince the ring bearer to join your conga line. Oh, he was such a vibe, though. He had rhythm. Maya. Okay, yes. Maybe I got carried away, she said, eyes now softening with the first signs of regret. I didn't mean to embarrass you. Or crash the party. Or get escorted out by two dudes who looked like off-brand men in black. Lara exhaled loudly, leaning back into the cab's seat. You didn't just crash the party. You scattered it. There was a long pause as the cab sped through the city lights, the buzz in Maya's system beginning to dim, replaced by a slowly creeping realization of just how much of a spectacle she'd made of herself. Do you think the host was mad? Maya asked, quieter now. Lara side-eyed her. Peter Cole? The man with the face carved by angels and the personality of a locked safe? He didn't even flinch when his ex tried to crash his yacht party last year. You made him speak. That alone is terrifying. Oh no, Maya whispered, the memory of him standing over her at the party flashing back, stern, unamused, and somehow distractingly good-looking. He was the host. I thought he was security with cheekbones. He was definitely the host. Maya groaned and covered her face. Kill me now. No funeral, just scatter my ashes over a bar. A decent one, with a good happy hour. Lara rolled her eyes but smiled, softening. You know, if it wasn't so horrifying, it would have been legendary. I am legendary, Maya mumbled. Legendary drunk. They both laughed, the tension lifting a bit, and by the time they arrived at Maya's apartment, the memory was already starting to blur around the edges. Still, a small weight settled on Maya's chest, the kind that only shows up when your brain starts to replay things after the adrenaline fades. She kicked off her shoes and slumped onto her couch, phone buzzing with a few blurry photos from the party Lara had snapped mid-chaos. In one of them, she was holding a champagne flute in one hand, gesturing dramatically with the other, caught mid-monologue with a man who looked like he was mentally escaping to another planet. Maya stared at the picture for a long moment. Oops, she whispered. Back at the estate, the party eventually found its footing again. Guests laughed nervously, unsure whether to make light of the incident or pretend it hadn't happened. The bride and groom resumed their first dance, and glasses were refilled. But for Peter Cole, the night had taken an unexpected turn. He sat at the bar now, his usual glass of neat scotch in hand, elbow on the counter, eyes still fixed on the empty space where Maya had once been spinning wildly in her own chaotic orbit. Who was she? He muttered to no one in particular. The bartender, the only one brave enough to answer him tonight, simply shrugged. Someone who doesn't follow the rules, I'd say. Peter took a slow sip of his drink. He didn't usually remember faces. But he knew without question, hers, he wasn't going to forget. The sun didn't so much rise as it attacked Maya through the thin slats of her blinds. A single ray of sunlight pierced through the room like a divine spotlight, landing squarely on her face with the cruelty only sunlight after a night of drunken debauchery could achieve. She groaned. Loudly. Her mouth tasted like old limes and regret. Eyes still shut, she fumbled blindly for her phone on the nightstand. Her hand knocked over a half-empty glass of water, a beaded clutch she didn't remember bringing, and finally landed on her phone, buzzing softly with new notifications. 6 unread messages. 3 missed calls. A voice note from Lara. Maya cracked one eye open and immediately shut it again. The headache behind her eyes was knocking like it had rent to collect. What did I do? She whispered to the universe. No reply. She sat up slowly, like a baby deer learning how to walk after a long night at a bar, and squinted at herself in the mirror across the room. One false eyelash clung to her cheek like a survivor from a shipwreck. Her hair was doing something that could only be described as abstract. There was glitter. So much glitter. And she was still wearing the navy dress from last night, albeit now half-zipped and twisted sideways like it had tried to escape her body and failed. Then, from the floor, her phone buzzed again. She picked it up and hit play on Lara's voice note. Maya. Maya. Are you alive? I hope so, because I swear to God, I've been getting calls from people all morning. What did you even say to the guy with the velvet jacket? Why did you try to arm wrestle the DJ? And do you remember almost kicking the cake? Because you definitely tried to kick the cake. Call me when you can talk without throwing up. Maya let her phone drop into her lap, face blank. I tried to kick the cake, she repeated to the room, as if saying it out loud might change the facts. Fragments of the night came flooding back in confusing flashes. The champagne. The man in the velvet jacket with the weird laugh. The music. The dancing. The spinning. The hands guiding her out. A handsome face with cheekbones sharp enough to slice bread. A deep voice. Her voice too loud. Something about tequila. Was she talking to a child at some point? Oh no. No, 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 she muttered, flopping backward onto the couch with a dramatic groan. She covered her face with a throw pillow and screamed softly into it. After a long moment of self-pity, she sat up again, pulled her phone close, and called Laura. Good morning, sunshine, Laura said deadpan. I deserve that, Maya mumbled. You deserve a formal apology to every person at that wedding, starting with me and ending with the poor guy you tried to teach the worm on the dance floor. I did the worm? No. You tried. You looked like you were swimming through invisible jello. Maya groaned again, burying her face in her hands. This is the end of my social life. I'll never be allowed within 10 miles of a white tent again. Well, you'll be happy to know that the host didn't throw you into a dungeon. That's progress. Maya froze. The host? Yes, Laura said slowly. Peter Cole. You know, billionaire real estate mogul? The actual owner of the estate? You insulted his party, flirted with him, called him a villain, and got dragged out by security while yelling about tacos. Maya sat in stunned silence. I'm going to die, she said finally. Forget cremation. Just toss me into the ocean. No service, no speeches. Laura laughed. You really don't remember all of it, do you? I remember pieces. Mostly feelings. Shame. Joy. A brief sense of invincibility. Then more shame. Well, in your defense, you were kind of amazing. But also kind of terrifying. Like a drunk hurricane in heels. Maya was quiet again, chewing on the inside of her cheek. I should apologize. Honestly, I don't think he expects it. Exactly. That's why I should do it. Maya. No, seriously. If that man spent a fortune on a perfect wedding, the least I can do is own up to the fact that I became the main event. She stood up suddenly, her hangover protesting violently, but she powered through it. Do you know where his office is? Laura blinked through the phone. Wait, you're serious? I'm already a walking scandal. Might as well walk my scandalous self into his office and apologize. There was a pause. You're going to storm a billionaire's office and tell him you're sorry for ruining his party? Yes. And I'll do it sober too. So he knows I'm not a complete maniac. Bold move. Fortune favors the emotionally unstable. 2 hours later, and after much-needed hydration, concealer, and the most responsible outfit she owned, black slacks, a tucked-in blouse, and her hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, Maya stood in the glass lobby of Cole and Gray Properties. It was sleek, modern, intimidating, the kind of place where even the plants looked expensive. She stepped up to the front desk, where a sharp-looking receptionist blinked at her. Can I help you? The woman asked, tone crisp.z. Yes, I'm here to see Mr. Cole. Peter Cole. Do you have an appointment? No. But I was at his event last night. I owe him an apology. The receptionist raised a perfectly arched brow. You're her? Maya gave a small, guilty smile. Guilty as charged. The woman pressed a button on the desk and said something into a discreet earpiece. After a moment of tense silence, she gave Maya a once-over and then nodded. He'll see you. Maya blinked. Wait, really? Top floor. Elevator on your left. Don't break anything. Noted. The top-floor office was glass-walled and bathed in natural light. It was minimalist, masculine, everything in its place. Peter Cole stood at the far end of the room, facing the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the skyline like he owned it. which, to be fair, he kind of did. He turned slowly when she entered. Maya cleared her throat. "Hi." He tilted his head. "Well, if it isn't Hurricane Maya." She flushed. "I probably deserve that." "Probably. I came to apologize," she said quickly, stepping forward but stopping at a polite distance. "I didn't mean to cause a scene. I wasn't even technically invited. My friend brought me as her plus one, and I drank too much, and I got carried away and… Look, the point is, I'm really genuinely sorry. You didn't deserve that." Peter studied her for a long, quiet moment. "You were memorable," he said at last. "That's not exactly comforting. I didn't say it was good or bad. Just true." Maya managed a small smile. "Well, I'll take true over forgettable any day." There was a flicker of something, amusement, in his eyes. He stepped around his desk, closer now, his presence somehow even more commanding in daylight. "Most people wouldn't have the nerve to come here after something like that. I've made peace with being most people's cautionary tale." He smiled. "Barely. But it was there. Apology accepted, miss." "Maya," she said, offering her hand. "Just Maya." He took it. "Peter." They stood like that for a beat too long before she awkwardly pulled her hand back. "Well, that's all I came to say," she said, already backing toward the door. "You probably have meetings, or a lawsuit to file, or an exorcism to schedule." Peter chuckled, a low, surprised sound. "No lawsuits today." "Good to know." She turned, hand on the doorknob, but paused. Then, without looking back, she said, "For what it's worth, I hope the couple still had a beautiful night." "They did." "Then maybe I wasn't that much of a disaster." She left before he could reply. And Peter Cole, who hadn't been caught off guard in years, stood in his pristine office with an unexpected thought floating through his mind. He hoped that wasn't the last time he saw her. Maya stepped out of the elevator onto the bustling street, blinking at the midday sunlight like she'd just returned from another planet. Her feet moved automatically, but her mind was a tangle of disbelief, awkwardness, and something else, a buzz of energy she didn't have a name for yet. He'd accepted the apology. Just like that. No lecture, no judgment, no threats of legal action or exile from the upper class. Just one raised eyebrow, one almost smile, and a handshake that had lasted a second too long. Peter Cole, up close, was even more dangerously handsome than she'd remembered. And she did remember, despite the alcohol haze from the wedding. He had that polished, unnerving look of a man who rarely heard the word no. Sharp suit, smooth voice, eyes like he saw 3 steps ahead of every conversation. But she had walked into his glass and steel lair, delivered her apology like an adult, and made it out alive. No tantrums, no fire, no security guards. Progress. She tugged her blouse into place, straightened her spine, and tried to convince herself that this was closure, that she hadn't just opened a door she wasn't ready to walk through. Meanwhile, back in his office, Peter stood perfectly still, staring at the door long after it had closed. Maya. There was something about her that stuck, and not just because she'd caused the most memorable scene his property had ever hosted. No, it was the way she'd walked into his domain like she didn't quite belong, but wasn't sorry about it. How she'd spoken like her thoughts had no filter, but somehow it wasn't annoying. It was refreshing, unpredictable, unscripted. Peter Cole didn't do unscripted, but there was an undeniable tug at the edge of his curiosity. The kind that made him abandon the quarterly report open on his desk and instead lean back in his chair, tapping a finger slowly against his lower lip. What kind of person crashes a high-profile wedding, gets thrown out, and then has the audacity, no, the nerve, to show up sober, unannounced, and own it? He'd expected excuses. Drama. Maybe even a tearful over-apology for effect. He didn't expect her. He certainly didn't expect to be left wondering what she'd say next, if given the chance. That evening, Maya curled up on her couch with takeout noodles, her laptop perched on the coffee table, and a throw blanket wrapped around her legs like a shield. Lara called as expected. "Well," her voice came through the speaker. "Did he throw you into a soundproof vault or offer you a settlement?" Maya slurped a noodle. "Neither." He let me talk. Listened. Said apology accepted, like a character in a royal courtroom drama. That's it. That's it. Was he weird about it? No. Calm. Kind of unreadable. But not rude. And I didn't cry, throw up, or insult his shoes. Growth. Thank you. Maya paused. Her chopsticks hovered in midair. He shook my hand, she added quietly. Lara perked up. Wait. What kind of handshake? The normal kind. But it lingered. Or maybe I imagined that. No. Details. Was it firm? Warm? Was there thumb tension? Thumb tension? What is that? I read about it in a dating blog. Apparently, how the thumbs press says a lot about romantic energy. You are not allowed to read blogs anymore. Okay, but real talk. Are you going to see him again? No, Maya said quickly. Absolutely not. I apologized. Case closed. Door sealed. Thank you, next. But even as she said it, her stomach flipped. Because something in the way he'd looked at her lingered. And she wasn't entirely sure she wanted that to be the last time they crossed paths. Peter wasn't sure either. The next day, during a meeting with his board of directors, his mind wandered, which was rare for him. He was usually sharp, decisive, attentive. But while someone droned on about commercial lease renewals, all Peter could see in his mind was the glint in Maya's eyes when she'd said, I've made peace with being most people's cautionary tale. A lesser man might have written her off. But Peter hadn't gotten where he was by ignoring his instincts. And his instincts, for some reason, were telling him that Maya, chaotic, unexpected Maya, wasn't done stirring things up in his world. Not yet. And the universe, being the nosy matchmaker it often is in stories like these, apparently agreed. Because 3 days later, as Maya stood in line at her favorite hole-in-the-wall coffee shop, clutching her usual notebook and debating whether or not to try the suspicious-looking almond croissant, a familiar voice cut through the air behind her. I hear the almond ones are safe. As long as you don't mind a little chaos. She turned, startled. There he was. Peter Cole. In a gray sweater instead of a tailored suit. No tie. Hair a little mussed from the wind. Real. Human. And smiling. Maya blinked. Are you following me? He tilted his head. I could ask you the same thing. I was here first. Then I suppose the universe has excellent timing. Her eyes narrowed. You don't strike me as a guy who believes in the universe. Normally I don't. He paused. But lately it keeps putting you in front of me. And just like that, the balance shifted again. Maya, caught somewhere between amusement and suspicion, gave him a slow once-over. What do you want, Peter? Coffee, he said simply. Conversation, if you're feeling generous. I'm rarely generous before caffeine. I'll risk it. She sighed. Fine. But if you try to talk business, I'm walking out. No business, he promised. Scout's honor. You were a scout? Not even a little. She laughed, soft and real, and he smiled again, wider this time. They ordered, sat at a small window table, and slowly, with guarded humor and hesitant curiosity, began to peel back the layers between them. Neither of them realized it yet, but this was the beginning of the unraveling. Not the dramatic kind. Not yet. Just the quiet kind. The one where two lives, entirely incompatible on paper, start orbiting the same strange little star. And neither one knows quite what to do with the pull. The coffee shop encounter had not been planned. Maya swore up and down, to herself, to Lara, to the coffee gods, that she was just there for caffeine and solitude. But after seeing Peter Cole again, in that deceptively casual sweater and with that unsettlingly charming smirk, she left with more than a cup of coffee. She left with a question. Why does he keep showing up? It wasn't like they had anything in common. He was steel and precision, she was color and chaos. He probably read the Wall Street Journal over breakfast. She read old astrology tweets and the back of cereal boxes. And yet, he had sat across from her for nearly 40 minutes that day, sipping his black coffee, asking her questions. Not the kind people ask just to be polite, but the kind that made her pause and actually think. What do you write in that notebook you carry? You said you've worked too many jobs to count. What's the weirdest one? Why do you always look like you're about to say something wildly inappropriate? And even though she'd been prepared to deflect, she found herself answering him. Honestly, easily. And when she'd said goodbye, she'd caught herself glancing back over her shoulder. Just once. The next time they ran into each other, it was even less expected. A week later, Tuesday evening, Maya was rushing across town with a reusable tote bag full of paintbrushes, a half-finished canvas tucked under one arm, and a coffee she really shouldn't have bought, considering her current bank balance. She'd agreed, against better judgment, to help set up for an art fundraiser Lara's company was sponsoring. Something about underfunded art programs, community involvement, and free wine for volunteers. She arrived at the gallery hot, frazzled, and balancing too many things at once. A paint smear graced her left cheek. Her hair was a messy knot, and her mood was this close to homicidal. Then she walked in and saw him, Peter Cole, standing in the center of the gallery like a misplaced magazine model. Crisp button-down, sleeves rolled, talking calmly with the event coordinator. Maya nearly dropped the canvas. "Are you stalking me?" she blurted before she could stop herself. Peter turned, completely unfazed. "Not yet," he replied. "But it's only Wednesday." "It's Tuesday." "Even better." She stared at him, then at Lara, who offered only a sheepish shrug and mouthed, "Don't kill me." Apparently, Cole and Gray had quietly become one of the event's largest donors. Because of course they had. "I didn't realize this was a black tie event," Maya muttered, adjusting the strap of her paint-splattered tank top. Peter's eyes flicked over her, warm and amused. "You make paint look like a power accessory." "Careful," she said, walking past him. "Flattery might make me suspicious." "Suspicion suits you." She rolled her eyes. "You really don't get bored of yourself, do you?" He grinned. "Not when I keep running into the most interesting person in every room." Maya paused, caught off guard again. She didn't do flustered. She did sass, defense deflection. But he kept cutting through all that like he had the cheat code. The fundraiser was a blur of activity. Maya helped arrange student art pieces along the walls, poured wine with Lara, and, much to her dismay, somehow ended up chatting with Peter for most of the night. He didn't hover, but he kept showing up. To offer help. To make jokes. To ask her what she thought of a particular sculpture of a giraffe made entirely of soda cans. By the end of the evening, they stood together outside under the string lights, the crowd thinning around them. He handed her a cup of ginger ale and leaned casually against a railing. "So," he said, "how do you keep finding your way into my calendar? I'm starting to think you're hacking mine." He chuckled, sipping his drink. "You know, I don't usually like these things. Fundraisers, crowds, speeches, forced small talk, people asking if I've bought any skyscrapers lately." She snorted. "Poor baby. Your money makes people chatty." Peter tilted his head. "And you're not impressed by any of it, are you?" "Nope," Maya said, finishing the last of her drink. "If you ever want me to swoon, bring me a burrito and tell me my eyebrows are even." He laughed, a full, genuine laugh that startled them both. Maya watched him, curious now. There was something about him that didn't quite match the press coverage, the headlines, or the boardroom reputation. There were cracks in his perfect armor. And she liked those cracks. She wasn't falling. Not yet. But her balance was definitely shifting. The third time they crossed paths was at the bookstore. It was raining, a warm autumn drizzle that made the city smell like damp leaves and old bricks. Maya ducked into her favorite used bookstore to avoid the downpour and found herself browsing the poetry section with a cup of tea in hand. She was flipping through a battered copy of Pablo Neruda when a familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. Let me guess, something moody and emotionally complicated. She looked up. Peter stood on the other side of the aisle, a small paperback in his hand and a half-smile tugging at his lips. "Do you live in this city, or are you just summoned whenever I least expect it?" she asked. "I could ask you the same thing." She narrowed her eyes. "Why are you here?" "I read books," he said innocently. "You read financial reports. That doesn't count." Peter stepped closer, holding up his book. "This is fiction. Sci-fi. A recommendation from my assistant. Well, look at you. A man of taste. I'm expanding my palette. I figured if I keep running into you in coffee shops, art shows, and now bookstores, the universe is clearly trying to teach me something. Maya raised a brow. And what's the lesson so far? He leaned just slightly closer. I have no idea, but I'm willing to keep studying. Her stomach flipped again. They browsed together for an hour. They didn't talk about business or success or scandals. They talked about their favorite childhood books, about how Maya used to write short stories in the margins of her school notebooks, and about how Peter had once stolen a library book and still felt vaguely guilty about it. It was weird and easy, and nothing like either of them expected. By the end of the week, Maya found herself rereading their conversations in her head, replaying his laughter, his sidelong glances, the surprising softness in his voice when he listened. Lara noticed. You like him, she said one night as they shared a bottle of wine on Maya's floor. Maya looked at her glass. I'm intrigued. You're glowing. You haven't glowed since that guy in 2019 who played the guitar and ghosted you for his barista. Not fair, Maya muttered. Just saying. This is new. This is big. It's weird. But it's real, Lara said softly. You can't fake the way he looks at you. Maya went quiet, because she knew. Peter didn't just look at her. He saw her. And that, more than anything, scared the hell out of her. Maya wasn't supposed to like him this much. He was too everything. Too polished, too established, too much. A man who ran corporations before breakfast and probably hadn't been rejected since middle school. But the more they ran into each other, or by some cosmic prank, were gently nudged together by fate, the harder it became to deny what was happening. The chemistry was no longer just a coincidence. It had evolved into a pattern, an undeniable rhythm. She felt it in the way her heart picked up speed whenever he entered a room, calm, assured, eyes scanning for her as if she were the reason he came. She felt it in the way their conversations shifted, slowly losing their protective sarcasm and sliding into something softer, more honest. Intimate. And she saw it in the way he looked at her, like she was a puzzle he couldn't stop solving. They started texting. Not the obligatory thanks for today, or nice running into you kind of texts. Real conversations. Late at night, in the middle of boring meetings, during walks, while waiting for food. Nothing profound, but everything meaningful. Maya just witnessed a grown man yell at a pigeon for looking smug. Peter, I would have sided with the pigeon. Maya, you would. You give smug. Peter, I give confidence. Don't confuse the two. Maya, same thing. Just better lighting. They joked about everything. Maya's failed attempts to cook quinoa, Peter's irrational hatred of clowns, her dreams of writing a book, his talent for pretending to care at galas. But beneath the banter was something slower. Warmer. A thread of closeness they didn't say out loud, but both began to feel. One evening, she invited him to a dive bar. It was spontaneous, a test if she was being honest. She wanted to see if Peter Cole could survive a place with sticky floors, mismatched stools, and a jukebox that only played sad 90s rock. He showed up in jeans and a navy crewneck sweater that made him look like he belonged in a cologne commercial. Maya stared at him as he walked in, wondering how someone could be both so clean-cut and so dangerously magnetic. Welcome to my world, she said, handing him a cheap beer. He raised an eyebrow. No sommeliers? No truffle fries, just pretzels, neon signs, and a pool table with one leg shorter than the others. And yet it smells like home. She grinned. You're adapting. I'm proud. They sat in a booth near the back, their legs brushing under the table every now and then, the kind of accidental contact neither of them pulled away from. Can I ask you something? Maya said after her second beer, resting her chin on her palm. Peter nodded. Of course. Why me? He paused. Why not you? I'm serious, she said, voice softer now. You're you. You exist in a world of private jets and 5-year plans. I exist in a world where I might Venmo my landlord because I'm short on rent. Peter studied her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, quietly, because I've never met anyone who makes me forget what day it is. Maya blinked. Everyone I know, he continued, talks about numbers. Projections. Appearances. You talk about stars and bad decisions and why pickles are underrated. You tell the truth, sometimes too bluntly. You don't try to impress me, and somehow, that's what impresses me most. Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. They sat in silence for a while, letting the noise of the bar fill the space between them. The clink of glasses, the hum of conversation, the crooning voice of a forgotten rock ballad. Then Peter reached across the table and lightly touched her hand. And Maya, heart racing, didn't pull away. That weekend, he invited her to his apartment. It wasn't some flashy penthouse made of gold and ego. It was minimal, modern, and surprisingly cozy. High ceilings, clean lines, and bookshelves that ran the entire length of one wall. You read actual books? She asked, scanning the titles. Only when I'm trying to impress a certain chaotic woman who crashes weddings. You must really want me to like you. I do, he said simply. And there it was. No games. No pretense. Just the truth. They sat on his couch, knees tucked under themselves, sharing Chinese takeout and laughing over an awful movie neither of them had seen before. Somewhere between the egg rolls and the fortune cookies, Maya looked at him. Truly looked at him. And realized she was no longer just intrigued. She was invested. Fully. Foolishly. Terrifyingly. But later that night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a knot twisted in her stomach. Because this couldn't be real. Could it? This wasn't how her life worked. She wasn't the girl who got swept off her feet by a brooding billionaire with perfect jawlines and a secret sense of humor. She was the girl who got rejected via text. The girl who once got ghosted after bringing homemade lasagna to a guy's apartment. She knew what happened next in stories like this. The cracks would start to show. Reality would crash in like an unwelcome guest, and she'd be reminded exactly why she didn't belong in his world. She should pull back now, before it was too late. Peter, meanwhile, was standing on his balcony, drink in hand, wind brushing against his sleeves. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she threw her head back when she laughed, the way she challenged him without meaning to, the way she looked at him like she saw past the wealth, past the title, past the armor. He hadn't let someone close in years. Not really. But somehow, Maya had slipped through every locked door without asking for a key. And the worst part? He wanted her to stay. There was a moment, just a moment, when Maya considered running. It happened as she stood in front of her mirror, adjusting the neckline of a vintage floral dress she'd found in a thrift store 2 years ago and sworn she'd never wear until the right occasion. Apparently, this was it. Because tonight, Peter had invited her to another party. But not a wedding. Not a fundraiser. Not a gallery opening. This one was his. Private. Small. Personal. And he'd invited her not as an apology, not out of coincidence, not as a casual acquaintance he kept bumping into. He'd invited her as his guest. Maya, the girl who once did the worm, or tried to, in front of his high society guests and got escorted out by security. Now she was being picked up in a sleek black car sent by Peter himself, with her name typed neatly on a card the driver held like something out of a fairy tale. And still, she couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong. The car pulled up to a townhouse nestled in one of the quietest, most expensive corners of the city. It wasn't flashy. No red carpet. No photographers. Just warm lighting, tasteful music drifting out through an open window, and the smell of something delicious baking inside. When she stepped out, hard in her throat, the front door opened. And there he was. Peter. No suit. No tie. Just a soft gray button-up with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. And that look, the one that made her feel like the only person in the world. You came, he said, stepping forward. You sent a car, she replied. I didn't want to risk you changing your mind. I almost did. Why? She hesitated, suddenly exposed. But instead of dodging, she told the truth. Because I'm still not sure I fit in this part of your life. Peter held her gaze for a long, quiet beat. Then maybe, he said softly, this part of my life needs to fit you. Maya swallowed hard, her chest tightening. Then, slowly, she stepped through the doorway. The townhouse was warm and full of life. Not the kind of life Maya expected. Not rigid men in suits or women sipping cocktails while judging each other's handbags. No, this was real. There were books stacked under tables. A dog, a scruffy rescue mutt named Edgar, asleep by the fireplace. Jazz playing on vinyl. People in mismatched outfits drinking wine from kitchen mugs and laughing too loud. No one asked her what she did for a living. No one looked twice at her shoes. These were his people, not the boardroom crowd, but the handful of friends who knew him beyond the headlines. People who called him D and teased him about forgetting birthdays and once setting a grill on fire trying to make ribs. And Peter? He didn't hover. He didn't parade her around like a prize or introduce her with the stiff pride of a man trying to prove something. He simply stood beside her. Calm, present, attentive, letting her take up space, letting her be. Later, after too much laughter and a second slice of pear tart, she found herself outside on the balcony, holding a glass of wine and staring out at the city lights. The wind lifted the ends of her hair, cool against the warmth of her cheeks. She didn't hear him approach, but she felt him, the quiet hum of his presence, as he stepped beside her. Enjoying yourself? He asked gently. I am, she admitted. I didn't think I would, but... She looked at him, wine glass cradled between her hands. But I think I've been wrong about you. Peter tilted his head. How so? I thought I had you figured out. Perfect, serious, emotionally constipated billionaire with a perfect life and a secret soft side for stray cats. I don't like cats. I know. That's why I said I was wrong. She smiled. You're not who I thought you were. And you're not just a hurricane in heels, he said, a glimmer in his eye. She smirked. I'm mostly that. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them thick with the tension of things unsaid. Then, softly, You scare me a little, Maya said. That caught him off guard. Why? Because this feels real. And fast. And like I'm going to fall too hard and too fast and crash headfirst into something I wasn't prepared for. Peter didn't reply immediately. Instead, he turned to her, fully, and took her hand, thumb brushing gently across her knuckles. Then let's fall together, he said, and figure out the landing later. Maya stared at him, breath caught in her throat. And then slowly she nodded. She didn't trust easily. But she trusted this. Whatever it was. Whatever it could be. The night ended with them dancing in the living room. Not some dramatic ballroom sweep. No twirling gowns or choreographed elegance. Just the two of them, barefoot, slow dancing to a jazz record with scratchy edges, her head on his chest, his chin resting on her hair. She could feel his heartbeat. Steady. Sure. The same man who once ordered her removed from a party was now holding her like something precious, something his. And for the first time in a long, long time, Maya didn't feel like she had to tone herself down to be wanted. She felt seen. Completely. Unapologetically. Loved, not in theory, but in action. Of course, stories like these never go without complications. But in that moment, with music in the air and his arms around her, there were no X's, no doubts, no headlines. Just two people who collided in chaos and somehow found calm in each other. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.